Steeler Nation, we are back with another great episode of the one and only The Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. I am Jay York Football. Alongside of me, as always, Mic'd Up Sports One. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have their quarterback for the 2025 season, Mason Rudolph.
Yeah,
but
you hope.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he can get the ball downfield. I'll take it at this point. Yeah, we have a great guest as always. Happy to be back on. I know you just got back from the beach. So, Sammy, why don't we get to things?
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Aaron Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Yeah, rough life for sure. And for what it's worth, I did not see Aaron Rodgers on the beach contemplating his future. Like that viral photo of him with the headphones and a towel over his head. So went on a mission to find A-Rod, and I think he's back in a darkness retreat in some third world country. So we'll figure that out, of course, when the time comes. Today we're excited. You mentioned it. We have a great show. This guy does great work with Establish the Run, Roto Underworld. He's here to talk some Steelers and just all around NFL. It's none other than our guy, Ryan Reynolds. How are you, man?
Good, man. You know, you guys are in a bit of conundrum here, so looking forward to talking some shop.
I think that's right. And we talked off air a little bit, the fact that you're a Giants fan, so you're familiar with the word conundrum. That's for certain. I want to talk Rodgers, of course, to start the show. It's still the hot button topic, not only in Pittsburgh, but the NFL. Where do you kind of see this heading from just obviously there's not any insider info really out there yet that feels all that credible, but it just in your personal opinion, what's going on, man?
So, I mean, obviously he didn't have a great year with the Jets. I will say I think he was better than a lot of people give him credit for. He's definitely not peak Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but for a guy over 40, I think he was better than a lot of people, talk about. That said, he wants to end his career on a high note. I think that's why he's interested in Minnesota. Not only do you get, you can stick it to the Packers with a superior roster, but you actually have a shot with a title in Minnesota. And now that they've kind of, moved themselves out of the sweepstakes kind of officially, at least in the short term, you're left with the Steelers and the Giants primarily. With Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin has winning seasons. What has it been, 15 plus years now where you guys haven't had a losing season? So that's the clearest path to him going, ending on a note that's at least not embarrassing. Where if he goes to the Giants, really, truthfully, guys, the only real draw the Giants have for Rodgers, because they have a bad offensive line, they have a brutal schedule, is he doesn't have to move if he stays with the Giants. So I think it's Pittsburgh waiting for Minnesota or retiring, and he could at least make you a little bit more dangerous in the short term, I think.
Do you see this as something where this guy's going to just draw it out for as long as he freaking needs to? I think I saw when Brett Favre signed with the Vikings, a couple decades ago, it was like late August. Do you see Rodgers being in any rush or just being carefree per usual?
Oh man, it's with him, like he may legitimately drag it out till August. August wasn't even on my radar. That's just to think that someone would keep people in this kind of predicament for that long is nuts. But maybe he just waits and hopes for Minnesota to finally cave. Maybe JJ McCarthy has an injury setback. That's the path I see if he waits that long. Otherwise, I would at least hope over the next few weeks I don't think he's going to the Giants. I think it's Steelers or retiring or waiting for the Vikings. So I think if he does it, he's definitely doing it before the draft. So the next few weeks would make sense.
It would be pretty nasty for the Steelers to wait all that time, or any team. Your draft is greatly, obviously, when you're just waiting on somebody. Anyway, I'll kick it over to Jordan. Jordan, what do you got?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely need a deep ball threat. The Steelers just signed Mason Rudolph. I'm not totally opposed to starting the season with him and going the draft route, a guy like Jackson Dart, and a few of these other guys. But let's talk about we just got DK Metcalf, obviously 5-year deal. Just kind of talk about the impact that he has. And how do you think the chemistry with him and George Pickens will be?
They're kind of an odd duo because they sort of have a lot of crossover skill sets. I mean, from a defensive coordinator standpoint, I don't know. I can't recall anyone having two pretty high-end, big-bodied receivers like that on the perimeter. So that's an interesting challenge, or a unique challenge rather, that opponents will have. Metcalf is more of a freak athlete than a great player, I'd say. He's become a more nuanced route runner as time has gone on, but he's more of a problematic matchup from a physical standpoint. Slants, stop and goes, deep ball. That's what he pretty much brings to the table. Where I actually think if Rodgers joins the Steelers, that Pickens is more of a contested catch player than Metcalf. I think he might actually be a better fit with Rodgers. So, but again, and then you throw in Freiermuth to operate in the short to intermediate seam, and they suddenly have an interesting group of pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting. And like I just allude back to having Mason Rudolph, I mean, I would hope that that's not the answer, but I'm just totally not opposed to it because I do think that he can get the ball downfield better than Justin Fields and Russell Wilson at this point. It's definitely going to be interesting, but me and Mike always talk about it. Obviously, we grew up watching, the Big Ben, the glory days, and now that he's gone, you kind of see what happens when you lose a Hall of Fame quarterback. We're talking 3-4 seasons now, and the Steelers still haven't figured it out. And we hope that, Aaron Rodgers doesn't, if he does come to Pittsburgh, that he doesn't make us wait until August. But yeah, a few more, and then I'll throw it back over to Mike. Kind of talk about, your stance on Mike Tomlin. We kind of talked off air about it, but we always like to we have a lot of local reporters on here, kind of get a national perspective guy, just kind of talk about the non-losing seasons, but we have to talk about, the playoff drought. So just kind of, give us your take on that. It's very interesting to get someone from, you're a Giants fan, national media. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants did this with Tom Coughlin years ago, and it's been a bad decade. That's my downside argument to it. I definitely understand that Pittsburgh's, one of the banner franchises in the league. Is anyone more consistent than the Pittsburgh Steelers even before Tomlin? But, they are stuck in purgatory. They're stuck in the middle, and in some ways that's the worst spot to be. You're never going to be bad enough to get a reset at quarterback, and then, you're waiting on Aaron Rodgers to hopefully choose you one day, which, that's not fun for anyone. But I do think – here's my question to you guys. Obviously, the Steelers are a coveted job. They're going to be patient with whoever they bring in, but who are you going to bring in that's better than Mike Tomlin? Because the Saints Sean Payton left the Saints, but the Saints are in a disaster right now. The Giants have been bad for a decade. Pittsburgh's a more stable organization across the board, but I do think the downside is maybe you long for the days where you're winning 10-9 games every year, over the next handful of years if you bring in like a Brian Callahan type level coach or something in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, grass is always greener, right? I totally see Tomlin going somewhere else and being incredibly successful. I think, as you're familiar with the franchise, the Eagles, obviously, in your division. For us across state, that's the one example people keep going back to, maybe because it's close to home, right, is saying Andy Reid, Hall of Fame coach, got the Eagles, to multiple NFC championships, but it just kind of felt like things were getting stale. He goes to Kansas City, and obviously, the guy is going to have a whole handful of rings. And the Eagles still find a way to, they get Doug Peterson, they win. They get Nick Sirianni, they find a way to win again. So I don't know. It felt like a change of pace was good for them. But you're right. And the fact that there's not a name that jumps off the top of my head is not a good sign. I mean, maybe a guy who is more offensive minded. I've seen a lot of offensive minded coaches recently, kind of really taking the pole position. McVay, Shanahan, Reed, right? I mean, you can go on down the list. The Steelers might just be outdated in the fact that they want defense first, and obviously Tomlin's a defensive guy. Jordan, I know I rambled a lot there, but what do you have?
No, I mean, I completely agree. Off the top of my head, I can't think a guy that's going to fill the void and come in and be a Mike Tomlin. I think for me, at this point, it's more of a culture change. I think whoever you get in there, I think the Steelers are afraid to rebuild. And I think the biggest thing is now is they always want to reload, as they call it. But at the end of the day, it's like, this is what it is. I mean, you have to rebuild, and build for the future, or you're just going to be in purgatory, like you said. I just think you could bring one of these young coaches in here, like Mike said, offensive guy, anyone at this point. I just think that there needs to be a culture change in Pittsburgh. And until that happens, I personally don't think. I agree. I think Mike Tomlin, everyone's like, oh, if he leaves the Steelers, if they fire him, he's going to have a job the next day. I'm like, I'm not saying that. We use this analogy over and over and over again. It's the same thing with Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Great, one of the greatest coaches of all time, but it was just time to go, and he found success in Kansas City. I think Mike Tomlin will do the same. I just think in Pittsburgh, it's kind of like, at this point, it's like we're running in circles.
Yeah, like when are we going to stop doing this? When is 9-10 wins?
Yeah, I mean,
more. Yeah,
the standard is the standard. What is the standard anymore?
Yeah, man. I actually, to your point, I think what they need legitimately is just a reset. Because when I look at their roster, I think a lot of coaches would come in here and win 6 games with this Steelers roster. I don't think it's a good roster. It's they have tools on defense, but I think that's the bigger key in general is. You may actually, and the Patriots are going through this right now too. Like they weren't able to bring in top of the draft talent for 10, 20 years, and they're paying the price for it a little bit. Pittsburgh's not in that kind of roster predicament exactly, but I do think if they were, drafting in the top 10 for 2 or 3 years, maybe then maybe a new coach then. The thing too is say they bring in a new young guy and he struggles for 2 or 3 years. Are they going to stick with him through that? Or are they going to then get someone else as the roster starts to ascend, like New England's doing with Vrabel? So I think that's the conundrum too. But I do get it. You guys are at the point now where I no longer think wanting to move on from Tomlin's ridiculous. Where 3 or 4 years ago I thought it was a little much.
I agree, Mike.
Watching the quarterback position a couple of years ago when they took Kenny Pickett, Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett, set them back. It was a guy with a really high floor, low ceiling, but it just wasn't good enough to get over that 9-8, 10-7 hump. They're just so afraid to be bad, and every NFL team and every city is. I get that, but even with Mason Rudolph, they're going to find a way to win 8 games because he put them in the playoffs last season. But it certainly is an issue. I guess I just want to round out with this. What are your thoughts just currently in regard to maybe the free agency? Are there guys out there that you'd still be interested in for the Giants? I know some names, you guys are wide receiver needy as well. I'm looking at, older guys, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen. Is there anybody out there? Like, are those guys worth bringing into you, or you think you just draft a younger guy and get on with it?
I actually think Keenan Allen would be an interesting proposition for the Giants because they have young, talented receivers. He's one of the best route runners in the league. A supreme veteran. Russell Wilson's still floating around there. I don't think anyone's really a Russell Wilson guy, if that makes sense. Like, he's the sort of guy who, if he had a 25-foot mural across of himself, and when you walk in his house, that's the first thing that you see. He's that kind of guy. He's just a little. But
you got for show. You didn't even realize there's a Russell Wilson guy. Show. He's right next.
I am a Russell Wilson guy.
I would rather have Russell Wilson than Mason Rudolph. And in the Giants predicament, like your GM and your head coach, you're on the hot seat. If you're bad again, you're getting fired. If your goal then for those guys becomes, can we win 9 games this year? And Russell Wilson definitely can, even against a tough schedule. So, even if Pittsburgh brought him back, I think that's reasonable. But again, like you're spinning your wheels still. You're still stuck in the middle. You're not really doing much. But if it's up to me, I'd rather have Russell Wilson than Mason Rudolph, even though I know he is. All of you Steelers fans have a soft spot for him.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, tell us about Establish the Run, what you got going on, where everybody can find you. Give us all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Ryan Reynolds NFL on X. I use it more during football season than right now. I kind of, take a load off now. I've been covering awards markets for half a decade plus. I'm pretty good at those. I started doing Survivor Series. Or Survivor pools rather for Establish the Run. I'm good at those. So futures betting, that's my slant, and I'm more of a football guy than a data guy. So I think I'm a little bit unique in that regard.
You got a March Madness bracket?
No, I just focus on football for the most part. I stay away from college basketball.
Smart, because I'm throwing money in the trash. So that's how you know.
You're better closing your eyes and letting your dog pick.
I know, you're damn right. He's a lot smarter than us too, that's for sure. Listen, man, it's been a pleasure. A lot of fun. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. Great to pick your brain. Really good stuff. And all of our best.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was fun being on.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, man, I'm ready for this saga to be over, but I don't think it's going to be over anytime soon. How many podcasts are we going to do in the next few months talking about Aaron Rodgers? I hope the over-under. I'll put the over-under on that maybe about 4.5. Hope it's the under, but if I were a betting man and I had to take a futures bet like Ryan, I would take the over because I don't think Rodgers cares much about making a decision.
My whole thing is like it's almost like he's purposely, just because of his personality, he's the type of guy that just drags it on. And at this point, Cam Hayward came out and said it. Like, if you want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, come on. Like, what's the point of waiting?
Yeah, he said he's not going to make a recruiting pitch, and he said
he's not going to go on a darkness retreat.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly think right now, again, I'm still a Russell Wilson guy. I think getting DK Metcalf and you have George Pickens on the other side, Freiermuth, Jalen Warren, some draft picks. If you want to draft a QB, cool. But I'm perfectly fine with going with just Mason Rudolph at this point.
Understandable.
Yeah. It's definitely again, I've never been a Justin Fields guy. I still don't understand. I mean, he has a great agent that could get him $40 because he's absolutely proved from a quarterback position, he's proved absolutely nothing. Not just
you would have given him $40 total, not $40 million.
I mean, it's just like he's a great guy. He's a great locker room guy, great athlete, not a good quarterback. Like Mason Rudolph, I tweeted it out and literally went bananas on X in last week and said that Mason and I people thought I was just being funny and it was a satire. Like, I'm literally telling you that I think Mason Rudolph is a better quarterback than Justin Fields.
Well,
so, quarterback throwing the ball down the field.
Onward and upward. It's hopefully we focus less on Rodgers and more on Jackson Dart. Maybe it's Jackson Dart season in the next couple of weeks because the draft is the thing leading up. So
I'm just getting a headache talking about Aaron Rodgers because we should have won that Super Bowl to begin with. So I don't even want to bring his name back up. I'll never forget that. There was broken TVs and we were down. It was anyways, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting and we're going to keep cranking out some great guests. Love when we have these national guys on to kind of get their take on, Mike Tomlin and because, it's unbiased. So, and that's what we try and do here. Just bring the best in the game. So thank you guys. Make sure you subscribe. Go back, watch some of our other podcasts with other great guests, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yep.
See you.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.